Hi, I'm Nicole from Qdos, and in this video today we'll be talking about the recently published HMRC and government research into the impacts of IR35 reform. Now, this report was actually published back in December, but given the timing and due to the festive season, it might have been something that you missed. Now, largely the government paper cites that the implementation of IR35 reform has been reasonably straightforward for businesses. And whilst it's come at a cost for businesses, that they have been able to implement appropriate measures and compliance processes into their organisations to deal with the new legislative responsibilities that they held. In this video, I want to cover off some of the headline stats and key takeaways from the report, just to give you a bit of perspective on how we have actually interpreted the information that HMRC and the government are presenting. The report covers an 18-month period from October 2019 to March 2022. Now, that period sees the lead up to the original date of the reform in the private sector, right the way through to 1 year on from the actual implementation date. As I said, the government intended for the report to demonstrate the largely limiting factors, in their opinion, that the introduction of the reform has had from a disruptive perspective for organisations and individuals. One of the key takeaways from the report is around the number of contractors no longer operating in a contractor capacity, and the number is 250,000. So the report suggests that 250,000 individuals are no longer working on an off-payroll basis, and that actually a significant chunk of those 250,000 individuals are actually now currently employed by businesses directly. Of that 250,000, the report says 130,000 of those individual workers moved as a result of IR35 reform. Now, what I would be interested to know is, of those 130,000 workers, how many of them were subject to a client who had taken a blanket ban approach, or were still subject to an incorrect IR35 determination. Of the 250,000, the report suggests that 20% of those individuals are operating via an umbrella company, and then a further 15% of those individuals are operating via a recruitment agency. Now, we know that utilisation of umbrella companies increased significantly with the introduction of IR35 reform in the private sector, and that lots of organisations opted to utilise this as a means to engage contractors on an inside IR35 basis, or as a means to engage contractors where organisations had a policy ban on individual contractors. One of the other really big figures in the report is that HMRC and the government perceive there to have been a £1.8 billion increase in tax revenue as a result of introducing the reforms. And the basis of that calculation from the report suggests that they have taken in the relevant offsets where there would have been an increase in national insurance and pay-as-you-earn contributions versus a potential decrease in dividend taxations, VAT and corporation tax. The report also focused on how much it cost businesses to actually be prepared or become ready for the introduction of the legislation, as well as how much it cost businesses to actually manage reforms in the first year since the rules were introduced. Now, for both of these periods, the figures run into the hundreds of millions of pounds. So I appreciate that HMRC's report suggests that it was a straightforward implementation for many organisations. The level of effort required, which results in several £100 million being spent across those businesses, would suggest that at least a significant amount of work was necessary for organisations to actually become prepared and be able to manage reform on an ongoing basis. We know from our own experience that reform can be and has been managed compliantly by lots of organisations, and equally managing ongoing compliance since the introduction of the reform is also doable. So some of the points from the report do highlight that lots of organisations were able to introduce measures and adhere to the legislation compliantly, but it did come at a cost. HMRC suggested that more contractors were unaffected by reform than actually directly affected by reform. That's probably a statistic that I would dispute. We know that any contractor that's been operating in the market for the last couple of years would, as a minimum, have been subject to either a form of IR35 assessment or part of a policy ban within a client organisation, and still to this day sees IR35 compliance as part of any opportunity for a new contract that they want to go for, and probably integral to the contracts that they currently have at the minute. Finish, half of firms said that it was reasonably easy to implement IR35 reforms based on the government's research. And that seems to be a point that they have clung on to as part of that report. So whilst that they say that they want to continue to review and understand the wider implications of the impact of the reform, a lot of the statistics in the report and the summaries provided by HMRC really seem to try and dismiss that as an issue. As ever, where there are any further comments to be had around those points, where HMRC publishes or issues any further commentary and/or updates, research or anything like that, we'll be sure to provide you with a bit of a Qdos perspective on those things. To stay up to date with Qdos videos, please subscribe to our channel.